Well then, I see that the picture shows that something industrial is going on, and the title has the word documentary in it. I don't think it takes a genius to figure out what is going on. I don't think it matters anymore. Anyways, nice to meet you guys. My name is John Lee De La Fuente. Ignore the static in my voice. You can never be too safe. It seems like this documentary will be about the Industrial Revolution?
Don't look at the script. We have to be professionals about this.
Don't worry, Bill Holland Ramirez. They can't even see our faces.
Shouldn't we at least introduce ourselves to the audience before showing the documentary?
You have a point. Anyways, to repeat myself, my name is John Lee De La Fuente.
As you heard from John, my name is Bill Hong Ramirez.
And my name is Bob Ching Garcia.
Can I start the documentary yet?
You have a point there.
Anyways, as I was saying, the Industrial Revolution was a very successful period that changed the world by leading to new inventions, causing negative and positive reactions from the citizens of Britain, and leading people to reform the harsh conditions they endured.
The Industrial Revolution was a period of time when America and Europe began to become industrial.
Before the Industrial Revolution, life was harsh and salaries weren't that great.
The manufacturing was all done by hand, which was very time-consuming.
The Industrial Revolution introduced a time where machines began to do the work that people did at a much faster and efficient pace.
However, as with anything in general, there were people who opposed the idea of technological change who were called the Luddites, and were believed to have been led by a man named Ned Ludd.
However, just like George Bush was believed to have done certain things, it was merely a theory.
The birth of the Industrial Revolution was in Britain. As the need for British goods increased, the production needed to be increased as well.
The industry which was impacted the most significantly was the textile industry.
I think we should start speaking formally about the important people during the Industrial Revolution. You know, to be formal and all.
You have a point there.
Anyways,
Around 1778, there were 20,000 different jennies present all across Britain.
in the 1780s, a young man named Edmund Cartwright invented the power loom, which was capable of weaving cloth.
In the early 1800s, another young man named Abraham Darby was able to produce cast iron in a cheaper and easier method, which consisted of using a coke-fueled furnace instead of a charcoal fueled furnace.
There was also an American during that time named Robert Fulton who was able to build the first commercially successful steamboat.
In 1820, a Scottish engineer named John McAdam was able to develop a new process for road construction.
In 1837, two British people named William Cooke and Charles Wheatstone were able to patent the first electrical telegraph.
In the 1850s, a British engineer named Henry Bessemer developed the first inexpensive process of being able to create steel.
I believe those are most of the important people who were able to contribute to the Industrial Revolution. I don't think I can even remember all of those that were mentioned.
Is that good enough, though? I think we need more.
It seems good enough to me.
I can't believe I am still going. Anyways, the Industrial Revolution was a major breakthrough for the middle class and the upper class.
However, the lower class was affected the most from the Industrial Revolution.
It was bad enough to the point where children were used to work in the factories.
This led craftsmen to be replaced by machines which are still used to produce goods today. I can also say most goods are made in China.
This also led to overcrowded housing and living conditions that would make a grown man cry.
Basically, people who were rich got richer, while people who were poor got poorer, which led them to be placed in factories with inhumane conditions and work hours.
Factory owners were also harsh to other people, and they didn't care much for their employees. In other words, they were like a stereotypical businessman.
The factory owners believed that if workers wanted to improve their lives, they should do so by themselves.
Since the work they had to do was not very difficult, they were easily replaced by others. Quite sad, really.
As with anything that is controversial, like police abusing their power, there were reforms that took place during the Industrial Revolution.
The reforms during the Industrial Revolution was a time during the era where laws were made according to the machines and workers of certain types of materials and their mills.
In other words, the government was not completely out of it.
Alright, time to start describing different acts. In 1802, there was the Health and Morals of Apprentices Act, which limited the workday of apprentices to 12 hours long.
In 1819, there was the Peel's Factory Act, which said cotton mills couldn't employ children under the age of 9. The workdays for children who were 9 to 16 years old were limited to 12 hours.
In 1833, there was the Factory Act, which extended to all mills producing textiles, except lace and soap mills. It helped children from 9 to 16 years old by limiting the hours to 8, and children 13 to 18 were limited to 12 hours. It also allowed children who were under 13 to receive 2 hours of education per day, but it had to be paid by the person working.
In 1842, there was the Mines Act, which forbid women and children from working underground after this act was passed.
In 1844, there was the Factory Act, which applied only to textile mills and made workdays for women and children only 6.5 hours. Children also get at least 3 hours of education per day, and women were only supposed to work 12 hours a day at maximum, and they were never required to work at night.
In 1847, there was another Factory Act, which changed the workdays for women and children from ages 13 to 18 to 10 hours per day, and a maximum of 58 hours per week.
In 1853, there was the Employment of Children in Factories Act, which prohibited children from ages 8 to 13 to be able to work before 6 a.m., after 6 p.m., and after 2 p.m. on Saturdays.
In 1867, there was a Factory Act Extension Act and Hours of Labor Regulation Act, which included non-textile factories and workshops into the previous Factory Act. And this law also prohibited children to work under age 8, and that they had to go to school from ages 8 to 13.
In 1867, there was another act called the Agricultural Gangs Act, which stopped the employment of children under 8 and the employment of women in field gangs.
That covers most of the acts. Anyways, these reforms really helped the lower class cope with the new changes that were coming.
All of the negative reactions that were received were combated by the reforms made by these people.
I guess the reactions people had were mostly negative. The only people who seemed to gain anything from the Industrial Revolution were the middle and upper class.
I think differently. In the long run, the Industrial Revolution did serve a huge purpose and impacted people worldwide.
Although people didn't react too positively, the Industrial Revolution did help out people in terms of increasing our technology and making our world a better place.
In fact, by the mid-19th century, industrialization was well established throughout the western part of Europe and America's northeastern region. By the early 20th century, the U.S. had become the world's leading nation.
I think the Industrial Revolution was a very successful period of time that changed the world by leading to new inventions, causing negative and positive reactions from the citizens of Britain, and leading people to reform the harsh conditions they endured.
Alright, I think we are done. Let's finish this documentary before I am forced into another one. Where are the credits?
He's the cheeky one. James! His